And welcome everyone to the Shitlord Preachers podcast. This is episode 41. Thank you once again for everyone who is joining us for the first time today. I'm pretty sure we have a lot of new faces around here, thanks to our live stream that we did last week with the Asian capitalist. Welcome everyone to the stream. The Shitlord Preachers is pretty much where myself and my friend Brook here, both former preachers, now reformed shitlords, and even if you guys want to know a little bit more about that, you can definitely check out the channel here. 2 o'clock Central Time today, I'll be premiering one of the videos that's basically me explaining about my time from, I call it from preacher to shitlord, an origin story. So, but yeah, I'm joined today by my good friend Brook, my co-host, who is Brook. How many subscribers do you need still?
I am 49 away, I think, from 1,000. I don't know the number offhand.
So yeah, Brook, who's been doing YouTube a little bit longer than I have, at least on his personal channel, is, I'd say, yeah, about 40-ish away subscribers from 1,000, which is to get him to start getting monetized. So if anyone is joining us today, please do subscribe to Brook's channel to get him off the ground so he can start raking in that liberal money.
Taking money from Google is always a good thing.
Exactly. But how's it going today, Brook, by the way?
It's going all right. I think we got like an ice warning coming out into Essex. So it's a little bit nippy outside.
Ice warning. What does that mean?
It's not going to be snow. It's going to be kind of like hail, and there's such a wind chill factor that the ice can form on the road because it's been very wet and stuff like that. But yeah, always good to be back with you, Amos. It's definitely exciting. We're on 41 episodes. Hi, everyone. For those who are joining us for the first time, my name is Brook Potter, originally from the Twin Island nation of Trinidad and Tobago. And I've moved out here about 2 years ago to the UK, been making a life for myself. And yeah, I've been joining Amos on this shows for at least 41 episodes and a couple other off this program streams, where we just sit down, we discuss issues of the day. Sometimes we have amazing guests, and we just kind of share things from the US and the UK perspective about current events. So always glad to be here, Amos. Thanks again.
Awesome. So actually, it's funny you were bringing up the weather. So here where I am, which
it's very English. To bring up the weather is a very British thing.
It's a very Minnesotan thing too, and it's something brilliant. It's something we have in common. It is 3 degrees below zero Fahrenheit, which is about 19 below Celsius, with a wind chill factor of 16 below. So that's about, I don't know. No, like 20-ish.
Minus 20 wind chill factor.
Let me see here. Basically what it feels like. No, 27 below. What it feels, that's in Celsius. What it feels like on your skin.
Dang.
And with my, the job that I work in, I tend to work in this a lot. So it's definitely, you develop thick blood real quick. So
that's, I mean, the UK doesn't get a lot of snow. Like we had one flurry of snow out here in Essex a couple days ago, and it was pretty thick. It was really nice snow. It landed well and stuff. In fact, my flatmate's girlfriend, she's from Thailand. She'd never seen it, and she did exactly what I did when I first saw snow, which was when I was in Kansas with a mutual friend of ours, and I saw snow for the first time. I threw on my hoodie and my jacket, my gloves and everything. I ran out into the snow and I just took it in, and she did the same thing the minute it came out, and dragged him out of the house, like, let's go and play in the snow. So, but it's been clear. It's actually been some pretty good days out here, up to about 10 degrees. I don't think the UK can really handle like really cold. Like it can't do Minnesota cold, right?
Right. Yeah. It's I mean, I looked at and on my phone here, I just have a few saved cities. I had what is it? Ashford, where you were for a little bit there.
Ashford, Kent, yeah.
40 degrees Fahrenheit, which is above freezing.
Yeah,
and that's quite nice actually compared to what we have. I mean, I get a little like being half and half, being half white, half Asian. I tend to have sort of this weird, I guess you could say, polarizing tolerance to temperatures. You know, we went to Thailand back in 2012, and I'm like, this feels just fine. And then I come back to Minnesota, like end of sort of basically Thanksgiving Day. I come back to Minnesota, and for the first like few hours, I felt like I was shriveling up like a raisin because it was so cold and dry.
Yes.
But there was something about it that just felt so nice, so to speak.
The
Like,
cold, you mean? Yeah.
yeah, it just your body's kind of like, hey, I remember this. I even like when I was in Texas and then I came back to Minnesota for Christmas. I had to take a bus for part of the way. I'm standing outside the bus station in Minneapolis, and it's a nice, nice little wind, not like a hard. Just it was blowing and it's cold, and I purposely stood out there because it felt so good coming from Texas. It was just this weird thing. Like I miss this feeling.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying. I'm much better with the cold than I am with the heat. So for instance, like, okay, so I came out to the UK, and it takes a while to adjust because I've been living in 30, 34 degrees Celsius summers like every day in Trinidad with like 100% humidity. So it literally is like walking through soup in that environment. So when I came out here, yeah, like 10 degrees Celsius, I needed like full on winter gear, right?
Right.
And then when I went out back to Trinidad, like I'd go back to visit because the move is a process. I'd go back and forth. And I went out to Trinidad, and I remember it was so goddamn hot, right? Like at night, I was at I think the Trinidad and Tobago Yachting Association. So I was on like the waterfront on like a jetty. The ocean is right there, and I was sweating, man. Like it was just disgusting. But now I've been here for 2 years. As I say, the night that we had the snow, where it probably got down to -3 degrees Celsius, so just below freezing. The bathroom that we have, the windows kind of remain open because we want to make sure it doesn't get mold and other things like that. And I use the bathroom at night, and I'm walking around in short pants like I'm still in the Caribbean and a t-shirt. I go downstairs in the cold, and it's fine. Like there'll be a wind chill on my back, and I'm it's cool, no problem. And like you say, I'm actually learning to kind of embrace the cold, which is it's very bizarre. I'm going back to Trinidad well, I'm not going to say when because I got some haters out there, but I'm not looking forward. I'm not looking forward to the weather and the heat that I'll get at like peak summertime and stuff, you know?
Right. But anyways, so before we make this into a weather episode, which is totally fine, but we wanted to kind of touch on the whole thing with Venezuela, which is, I mean, everyone's been kind of keeping tabs on them. You have of course, the left is kind of, well, it's state capitalism. It's not real socialism, of course. And it's and then the right is this is just complete socialism gone wrong, which is very true. I mean, actually, be funny if I try to look up what is the exchange rate to the bolivar.
Well, there are 3 exchange rates. So you want the public one? I think it's like 15,000 bolivar to 1.
Wow.
Was it more than that?
Here we go. 500 2,000 Venezuelan bolivar.
Yeah.
Is 1 penny.
Right. There you go.
Let's see. 248,000 bolivars to the dollar.
There you go. It is absolute insanity.
I mean, I've understood, some currencies, how they tend to line up with the, like, for example, I know the Korean currency it tends to be a higher number compared to the US dollars. Like, just some countries have like higher numbers, and I don't think it really has anything to do with specifically the value. For example, like the Thai baht and then the new Taiwan dollar, which is what they use in Taiwan, are both very similar. They're about 30 to 30, like usually between 30 and 35 of their units to our dollar.
Yeah, it has there are different types of currencies. Not to get too much into it. Some of them are backed by commodities.
Right.
Some of them are based on a basket of currencies. So like we don't exactly know what the Chinese yuan and was it yuan? Chinese yuan? Yeah.
Yen.
Yeah. No, that's Japanese yen.
Yen, but yuan is how you pronounce it.
Yen. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so that's based on like a basket of currencies. We don't know the exact ratio. And yeah, like the sterling pound is above the US dollar. It's usually based on there are a lot of factors, but mostly the productivity of the country. So if it produces a lot and exports a lot, it tends to have a stronger currency. In the US, manufacturing is kind of declining, but what ends up happening, there's a lot of investment into the country. So there's always a buying of US dollars so that, they can buy US investments, and that kind of offsets the fall in production. But you're right. The believer, I mean, we could just get into it. I mean, I don't think anybody doesn't know the situation that's going on in Venezuela. I'm next to Trinidad and Tobago is right next to Venezuela. So we've been getting, for the first time, an influx of what you'd consider refugees, really.
The Venezuelan refugee crisis?
The Venezuelan refugee crisis. I mean, Colombia is taking the bulk of it because, of course, Colombia is Spanish speaking. Venezuela is Spanish speaking. Trinidad, not so much. But what the Trinidad does have is good relations with the US. And a lot of the Venezuelans who actually have money, they want to set up a business in Trinidad, make a bit of income, and then try to pivot to get to the United States. And it's easier to do that because all the flights are controlled. You can't get like a flight to the United States without like government authorization. You need to have a reason to do that. And the government controls the currency. So there are 3 exchange rates. There's the public rate, there's the preferred rate, and then there's a business rate. And that's contributed to the empty shelves because companies can buy US dollars at a much cheaper rate than the public, and then they just sell it to the public and make the spread, so they don't actually have to do any business.
Right.
So they don't need to import anything. They don't need to, all this other stuff. So
real quick, so we do actually have a few viewers. I don't know if you've seen that. We have some people in the chat right now.
Hey guys,
we've got a little comment here, which I think is interesting. From one little Alex, he says at some point Venezuela might as well drop their currency and trade in products alone.
It would be great. It would be absolutely great if they actually produced anything anymore, because the other side of the coin is the destruction of property rights. And I actually have a video on my YouTube channel. Will Trinidad and Tobago end up like Venezuela? And I basically explain, if you destroy property rights and you print money to pay your debt, and you have this fucked up exchange rate, you're going to destroy your economy. So I think GM had a manufacturing plant in Venezuela. It was seized. Heimlich & Payne, which is the like all the oil rigs, they own the oil rigs. The big companies like Texaco and Amoco and stuff, they rent from Heimlich & Payne. So they were like, American companies that were drilling oil in Venezuela, and they came and they seized all of the rigs from Heimlich & Payne. And so that's the problem. That's why nobody wants to actually produce anything in Venezuela, because if you have a successful business, Mr. Stateman is going to knock on the door and be like, hey, we're taking over this for the public good. And they destroy what's left. Most recently, Maduro, because of the situation. So to bring everybody up to speed, the opposition leader has basically declared himself the interim prime minister. President. Sorry, they have a president. And he's sworn to kind of, take over and stuff like that. And he does have support, but he didn't actually win an election to do this. And the grounds for which he's doing this is basically the humanitarian crisis in Venezuela, right? There's no food, there's no work, there's no investment, and all these other things. And given the low price of oil and the huge spending of the state, there's just no money. And Maduro knows this, so he's concentrated resources to basically party members and, of course, the military, because he wants them on their side. So this is the dilemma. I don't know if this is going to be successful or not, because the opposition hasn't actually won an election. But because of the continued humanitarian crisis, there might be grounds to declare him can as a despot, and might be grounds on international law to remove him from power. And that's the debate at the moment. So what's ended up happening? The leader of the opposition, I can't remember his name. I don't know if you could look up his name in the meantime. He's kind of gone into hiding because technically it's treason.
Their new president.
Yeah, well, the self-declared new president of Venezuela. So he's in hiding. Maduro has basically said this is a U.S. plot, and he's broken off diplomatic relations with the U.S. Demands that the ambassador leaves. They're not going because they don't recognize his legitimacy. And it's a fight for power. And the real question is, who controls the military? And Maduro has the edge because he's feeding them. Right? It's the only food that comes in is basically for the military and party leaders. Yeah. Who is the opposition leader? I can't remember his name.
Guaido?
Yeah, it might be Guaido. Yeah. Yeah.
It's it's funny. I type in 2019 Venezuelan president. First thing that pops up, Wikipedia, 2019 Venezuelan presidential crisis.
yeah. And it is big news. So like why I actually wanted to touch on this is because there's an implication for this for my home country of Trinidad and Tobago. Now, again, look, Trinidad and Tobago is very left. They've never had a conservative government. Very socialist. It's an oil economy, and the production of gas, oil and natural gas in the country has been declining for some time. And the government, with I don't think much foresight, has latched their future of gas production to a Venezuelan deal to access Venezuelan gas fields. So they're basically saying, well, even if we run out of gas, we have the skill, we have the material, we have the pipelines and the processing ability. So we're just going to, shift to Venezuelan gas, and we'll continue to produce with like a revenue sharing agreement. And I thought this was a terrible idea because it didn't take into account the political risk of exactly what we're seeing today, right? So they looked at it purely on the economics. And I was like, this. Well, first of all, the Maduro government, if it's really successful, they'll just seize all of the assets as they've done before, right? And they just wouldn't pay the Trinidad government. But even if it's not successful, even if it is successful, he could be ousted because of what looks like a pending revolution. And they don't have to honor these agreements anymore. They will need all of the revenues coming in to support the rebuilding of the entire economy. And they might say, well, Trinidad and Tobago, we're going to renegotiate, and it's not going to be as good for them.
Right.
One final point on this, and this is the debate we were just having before we got onto the air. Again, Trinidad has there's an anti-American streak in Trinidad, and it's not justified for any reason, but they think much like other, U.S. interventions, the Americans are doing this to get oil. And as you and I were just discussing, that doesn't really add up. In fact, because of the U.S. shale and oil production and gas production, the United States has gone from a net importer of oil to a net exporter right behind Saudi Arabia in terms of production, right? They are now the second largest producer of Brent, shale oil, West Texas WTI oil. So they don't need oil, right? It's like, why would that be in their interest? And even on the flip side of that, and this is my final point, the more oil that comes into production with the global slowdown that's coming, the lower the oil prices, which is not good for the US oil producers, right? It's good for the consumers, I guess, because goods get cheaper for transport. But you actually want there to be more shutdowns in oil if you want the price to come up and for the economy to be boosted from the oil revenue. So
right.
None of that makes sense to me. And yeah, this is where we're at.
Yeah. No, I guess I wasn't informed enough to really know exactly, because I was talking about the whole, the meme of the U.S. goes everywhere in the world to get oil. The meme is like, oh, my, a teenager is sitting there like, my face is getting all oily now. And then the next part of the meme is like a whole bunch of Marines with guns are like all over his face, like securing the oil.
Securing some freedom for his face.
Exactly. But
Team America shows up, you know.
I'd figured that maybe, well, does the meme hold any truth at all? Does the US actually go into other countries still to secure, maybe not to like straight up steal the oil, but to at least through, corporate lobbyists to secure like interests. So they secure it to install, governments or local officials that are more friendly to big oil companies to go in there and put in rigs that they can run and make money off of.
Yeah, I would say the contracts is probably the bigger honeypot. So Halliburton, for instance, one of the big oil and gas. I mean, they're just a conglomerate. They do everything. They got a lot of sweet deal contracts in Iraq and possibly Afghanistan, and like the private security forces, they got some very rich contracts. But again, it's not actual production because it's U.S. money, government money, just going to private corporations. The money comes right back to the U.S. Right? These American companies just pocket from this corporatist agreement. But you're right in terms of securing the oil supply to a certain extent. That was the Kuwait war, the first Iraq war. Mm-hmm. Was when Iraq moved into Kuwait and the U.S. forces. So Gulf War I with Bush Sr. It was because Kuwait was an exporter to the U.S. The dynamic of all of that has changed because of shale technology. And there is literally too much oil, right? And that's not even to mention like the new finds in Uganda and Guyana, again, in Latin America. They haven't even come online yet. And we already have too much oil. We already have like way too much oil being produced. And these other new finds that they've come up with, it's going to flood the market even more. But yeah, it's U.S. independence, energy independence changes the political standing of the Middle East and their interventionist policy. So it's a good thing as far as I'm concerned.
Because these corporations and they get all corporation-y.
Is this the Team America podcast today?
These corporations who are over there in their corporate buildings getting all corporation-y.
And not paying their taxes and their fair share.
Exactly.
And that's how the world works.
Yeah, I honestly haven't kept up too much with it. All I heard was there's some dude that wants to be the president, that is going to be the president. I guess Trump is kind of stepping in, and I guess, is he supporting this rogue president, so to speak?
Well, I can't. It's hard to say, but he is supporting the opposition leader as the president, and then most of the Western world has kind of jumped on board with this. So Canada, the UK, Europe, I think a lot of the Latin American countries have jumped on this. But the irony is, Trinidad and Tobago has not. And if there was any kind of military action that needed to take place, and Trump hasn't ruled that out, they would need to stage from Trinidad and Tobago. They would need the support of Trinidad and Tobago in order, to do it, because we're literally like maybe 60 miles off the coast of Venezuela, right? So it's a very convenient staging area. But because the government has an agreement for the gas fields, they've been basically, their hands are tied. They have to side with Maduro because they've pegged their future of gas revenue to the Venezuelan government and to Maduro.
Right.
So it's a very sticky situation.
Right. Now, the next thing we wanted to kind of get into, and this is like multi-layered, and so, just depending on how you look at it. The Covington Catholic School kid.
MAGA boy.
Hey, dude, that could make a really awesome comic.
MAGA. If we have any artists out there that are looking to do some freelance work, we'll launch MAGA boy as a superhero. There is a Miss Europe, like super European, some shit like that. They've like got a cape and shit.
Some feminist nonsense, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it's some blonde girl. She's been whatever. Anyway,
I mean,
yeah.
you gotta, yeah. I mean, if you had like, God Emperor Man and MAGA Boy. I think I told you about. So for anyone, just to let everyone know, I do watch anime. How much
really?
exactly? So
Do you
that
only
everyone,
watch half of it?
yeah,
Half an episode.
yeah. So I
That's
mean,
a
I'm
half
not.
a joke, guys. That's a half a joke.
Yes,
Just saying.
that's the. Exactly. Yeah, I've got some people in the chat now are laughing, saying MAGA Boy flies into the rescue.
There you go.
Flies into the Middle East to secure the oil. But so I think I told you there's this anime called My Hero Academia. It's like a world where people have like superpowers, basically. They call them quirks in the show. And you're following like this kid who becomes the greatest hero in the world. And so he goes to the school. While someone redrew the artwork, they took the main sort of the figurehead of the character, figureheaded kind of character. So there's a main character, but there's like the guy who mentors him. He's sort of like the second main character. They redrew him because he was this big buff guy with blonde hair. So they redrew him to be in a suit with Trump looking hair.
Okay.
And then they said it was called My Hero Magademia. So
brilliant.
If anyone wants to look it up, it's pretty epic stuff. If you compare the original with this parody, it's pretty funny. But
I mean, the memes that have come out from Trump is just fantastic. Like we've seen a lot of the God Emperor ones where they put his head on like an armor suit of Horus, an Egyptian god, and like just
that's from what the Warhammer 40K, which I'm not too familiar with. It's that whole mythos, I guess. Universe. They put his head on there, and it's just sort of over the top Deus Vault type looking thing. It's the first meme president is going to be an interesting one to tell my kids in the future.
And he really is. Like the irony of this, of course, is like Barack Obama was supposed to be like the internet president.
He was the first president to really take advantage the internet
of social media.
Right. The tweeting, he would joke about himself, so the awareness and stuff, but Trump is like the next thing. The next, like, okay, this is the meme president.
This is the meme president. Like literally, he is, taking over the internet, and he's got like his trolls and stuff like that. Nobody has weaponized the internet like Trump, I think, is the answer.
Right. So yeah, in the chat here they say, well, he's not the first. Well, yeah, we understand. Yeah, Obama was the first internet.
They called him that. Yeah,
the internet president. Like he's the one that really, maximized that as a way of running his administration. But Trump is the one that's really made the memes.
Yeah.
And that's becoming sort of. I think Trump is like 2 steps away from doing meme review on PewDiePie's channel.
Why?
He could like all they need is like 10 seconds of him like looking at a meme and just him going next meme, and the internet would split in half. Just
it's great. It's like everybody knows we weren't exactly on board with the Trump train. But when he got elected, I didn't know what he was going to do, but we all said it was going to be the most entertaining 4 years in politics. And I'm glad to say he has not disappointed. I'm really, really impressed with where he's at. But we got to get to MAGA boy against the Native Americans, which is that racist?
What's that?
MAGA boy versus the Native Americans. Is that racist?
MAGA boy goes back in time to help the colonists. I'm just kidding. No, so yeah, Covington Catholic School, the kid known as, I forgot his name, anyways. So the kid known as the MAGA hat wearing kid. In context, what actually happened was there were 3 groups, I guess, here. They were in DC. and was it? Yeah, it was in DC. It was some like national public place, national monuments and such. I'm totally butchering this part of it, but 3 groups were there. So there was the Native Americans. There was his school, which were all wearing MAGA hats, private Catholic school, going there for a pro-life sort of deal. And there were the Black Israelites, basically black, borderline on like black supremacist kind of people, black nationalist types, I'd say, right? Would you agree?
It's a little more complicated than that. They don't necessarily hold to nationhood. They believe when the Bible speaks about the Jews, they are the real Jews. Like they are the real God's chosen people. That is.
But would you say there is a black supremacist?
Well, yeah, because they feel they're superior. They take all of the promises and stuff like that. Not to get it. I mean, we're former preachers, so this is kind of awkward. But yeah, they take all of the promises and basically said those were promised to them, and you know that kind of thing. And yeah, that's where they come from.
Moses was a brother.
That's right. That's where that came from. Yeah.
So yeah, in context, they show that there was the 3 groups. The Black Israelites, I guess, basically had been instigating like some sort of confrontation, like kind of just yelling very racist, very bigoted sort of things. And so there were the kids that were there, and I've seen even the interview, which I think is complete, just obviously a smear. Kind of a smear move there by the news, because they interviewed the kid. I don't know if you saw that clip.
I did.
He was on the Today Show
on ABC.
Yeah, and it was just, oh my gosh. And again, if I'm misrepresenting any of the specific details, do apologize. Everyone, please go look into it. But he was on a news show, probably the Today Show. Probably, I'm not exactly sure. Came on there and he was being interviewed, and it was reminiscent of the Corey Worthington incident.
Right.
No, he's not. So the kid wasn't presenting himself as the Corey Worthington, sort of what we consider the Zen alpha, I don't give a fuck kind of guy.
Right.
But the kid was just being in a position where I think the woman, just when she was interviewing him, was very much trying to shame him, put him down. Like every question seemed to point into sort of nudging him towards admitting that he's wrong and what he did was completely wrong. Like, forget context, forget hindsight, just, oh, you knew what you were doing, you were totally wrong. Like this fucking kid. And because so the Black Israelites were instigating, the Native American group came up to him and he basically stood his ground, didn't say a single word. And of course, the infamous smirk becomes a meme.
Yeah, the face crime.
The face crime, yeah, like 1984. So they tried to cause him to do something. But the initial way they presented it was, this group of kids walked up to the Native Americans and just started smirking at them as like some sort of fear tactic or
intimidation tactic.
Right. Like the kid straight up says in the interview, this later interview, that says, like, she said, the lady tried asking him, like, did you guys feel like threatened in any way? Did you feel like in danger? And the kid's like, we were surrounded by adults.
Right.
Any move I made, I was going to be in trouble. Like the kid's literally saying, I was so freaky, like I was freaking out standing there.
Yes.
There are adults banging drums in my face. There are, I'm sorry, but very aggressive black guys in the distance trying to instigate with racist, slangs and phrases. I think you'd be scared out of your goddamn mind. But he stood his ground, and he said he was trying to smile to show, like, I'm not afraid. But it was interpreted as the smirk.
The
smirk of arrogance and bigotry and white supremacy. Exactly.
Yeah, I saw that shit.
Thing, he's colonizing that space with his smirk. He's such a colonial whatever. I mean, goddamn, it's on the level of like, well, it's nowhere near obviously the you remember decolonize science. Remember that?
Right. Yeah, there was a video clip of the girl doing a presentation in Africa and how we have to
Because yeah,
decolonize
because
science.
because you know, gravity was invented by a white man, therefore black voodoo in Africa is totally legitimate.
Right. Well, it's something like that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm grossly exaggerating and generalizing a bit, but that's the gist of it. Was just what? Like,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
anyways,
yeah.
little off topic there.
I mean, what got me with the thing? I came to the party late with MAGA boy. The justification of the media and the people on the left, especially the checkmark Twitter squad, um, it was absolutely outrageous. Well, first of all, they tried everything to implicate these boys as being, you know, some kind of violent or, you know, uh, some kind of regressive Trump supporters that are angry and all this other kind of stuff. And did you see the video that they posted? They were kind of heckling some girl. So there's like a handful of boys on the bench, and they're saying, "Build a wall, build a wall." And some girl is passing by, and she's like, I don't, you know, I'm not even going to engage with them." But they didn't do anything. They, you know, all right. That was when before this whole incident happened. There were a bunch of them saying some shit, being teenagers. It's like 16 or whatever. And they're trying to use that to suggest that they were violent in some capacity.
Have you ever seen a single video that has shown a Trump supporter being the initial aggressor of an incident? Starting it, so to speak.
No, the only place where we saw something like that, I think, was it Charlottesville, where the person got hit by the car?
Charlottesville, yeah, Charlottesville was the closest thing we saw to that.
But we're still not sure who started that, to be fair.
Exactly. So even, and here's the thing though, even if it was the right, you know, the far right, alt-right, hardcore people, even if it was them that started it, as far as I can remember, that's like the only hard case that you can even come close to saying the right wingers started it.
I think you'd be right.
The rest, as far as I've ever heard from both mainstream, because the mainstream keep it vague, well as the alternative sources of both the likes of certain people like Tim Pool or James Alsop, both sides of the spectrum, if you want to look at it that way. You know, Tim Pool being more center left, James Alsop, depending upon who you talk to, tends to be very right wing.
Yeah.
Both sides have shown it's typically the left wingers that tend to start it. You'll follow. I mean, you find a lot of alternative sources, and it's usually the left wingers that are more acting out in violence to initiate the incident, the conflict. And this whole time, this kid wearing a MAGA hat, MAGA boy, is now the aggressor in the situation.
Where and he did nothing.
Yeah, he just, if we even gave him the slightest bit of validation in the claim that he was smirking, what the fuck does that even matter? A smirk?
I mean, even beyond that, it's a bunch of fucking kids.
Yeah.
Right? It's a bunch of teenagers being teenagers. I think one of the clips I saw, they were doing the tomahawk, you know, this motion, which people do at football games. You're like, you know, they do the chanting, score, you know, a kickoff or whatever, right? They were no worse than a bunch of like excited fans at a football game, right? And they're kids. Like even if they did say some stupid stuff and they were kind of dancing around to the drum beat.
Oh, that's right. I heard that. Yeah, they were kind of doing like a, well, we'll just say a bit of a powwow.
Yeah.
It's you're not really, you're like, those kids, even if they were like just kids, and I'm not advocating this in any way, but hypothetically, if these kids somehow like did a bit of a circle around the Native American guys and started kind of doing like a whole kind of thing, that still wouldn't be violent. It'd be a little bit aggressive, you know, but they're fucking kids. Yeah. These were all full-grown adults. And then there was the whole like, then the news came out with, so Nathan Phillips, which is the Native American guy with the drum, what came out as being this is a Vietnam War vet, and now it's a veteran thing. But then when they dug even deeper, they found out he was a refrigerator repairman or something.
He didn't serve in Vietnam or something. Yeah,
he served, but he was purely like an appliance mechanic or something for the military.
right. He wasn't on the kind of the front line. Yeah, I
I
think I
mean,
saw
veterans
something
are
like that.
veterans. I'll give him that. But
Yeah,
to like paint him as like some war vet that has seen, he's seen some shit and now he's got to come back to his homeland and be, smirked at by a white boy with a MAGA hat. Like the whole narrative, the really it's I think it's devious almost. Like when you start to see how the mainstream media really tries to carve out a narrative, so to speak. Like, look
yeah,
at all just kind of slithering with this narrative, like to make it just look the right kind of story. Aggressive looking white boy who's and even, I mean, you could even get into like camera angles because the angle is such a way with that shot, that iconic shot of the MAGA boy. He looks bigger and taller.
right,
Like when I
right.
saw him on the interview with that woman, that Today Show interview, the kid was small. The kid probably was like 5'4", 5'5", looked 14. Whereas
Right.
in the video, the kid looks like 17
Yeah.
and maybe like 5'9".
Right. Yeah. He looked taller than the Nathan Phillips.
Yeah.
That which is
Nathan Phillips was just kind of probably crouching down a bit. It's just the angle. Like, it's so fucking
dishonest.
deceptive. Oh, and it's all like I've looked into this. Like the whole thing with news is not about really the facts and the figures. It's how do we trigger the amygdala in the
An
brain
emotional response.
to trigger. Well, yeah, the amygdala being, for those of you who don't know, is the part of the brain that kind of indicates danger. And it gives you anxiety when that responds. Like
Fight or
when
flight.
you're right. It's kind of that, like, we have that part of our brain that is still so part of our physiology that the news knows how to keep that triggered. That's why bad news sells so well, is because we're just playing the amygdala. I mean, why does sex sell? Because we still have penises. It's just these are all things that
Even
the
women
media
have
does.
penises in 2019, apparently.
Dude, I mean, anything can happen. But the
Are you checking the
jeez. The chat, someone
Yeah.
says the AWOL 3 times refrigerator mechanic
Reservist. He was
reservist.
he probably definitely wasn't on the front line. I think even the tribe. I wanted to touch on this. So a couple of points on that. The tribe that apparently he's a part of, they put out an official statement basically saying he does not represent us. He has a history of this kind of behavior, of trying to stir up political unrest and doing kind of controversial things. So they kind of denounced him. And then there was also a clip where not the Nathan Phillips, but I guess one of his accomplices was basically lecturing one of the other students about how they stole the Indians' land, and you've only been here for a couple hundred years while our people have been here for millions. So just kind of fuck off with your whatever. I don't know what the boy's opinion was because that wasn't recorded. But in all respects, it seems like the political action. I think we have some serious questions for Mr. Phillips, and I think the Black Israelites. I think even the leader actually came out with some kind of statement. I haven't seen it yet, but they were not scrutinized to the level as this young kid. And my last point on that was, of course, the blue check mark outrage squad that was literally calling for violence and death on these young kids, which nobody in the media picked up on, which was detestable.
The overwhelming call for like a mass shooting at this school, the possibly doctored pictures of their sporting events where they were doing. So there were pictures of these kids kind of doing one of these. The whole
at the
okay
basketball
sign.
game.
Right.
Yeah.
That could mean anything, but because 2016, 27, whenever it was, this became the white supremacy symbol. So everyone, if you guys want to make a meme, here we are, guys. Don't fucking care. But that's the whole meme with that. There's the whole there was like a blackface-ish kind of look someone found too, where they like the kids were doing like a blackface like kind of like makeup like, but then if you know anything about sporting events, you know that kids do the black face paint thing not as a blackface thing, but more as sort of an aggressive sort of intimidation thing, like an intimidating fan base kind of move. Not that I mean, it's definitely pretty darn close to blackface, depending on how you look at it. But you need to understand the context. You need to understand the nuance that, you know, excuse me.
Yeah.
The nuance of a sporting event where people do face paint is there. Like you have, so for example, for my school, our school colors were blue and gold, royal blue, royal gold, blue and yellow, depending on how you look at it. And we had fans that would be in the stands with sort of a half blue, half yellow sort of body paint kind of thing. You know, to the point also you'll see like you know, sort of the name of the mascot and all this stuff. You just have that. So is that, you know, is that culturally appropriating Asians and the Blue Man Group? I don't know.
I mean, even in the Navy SEALs, that was like a thing when they would drop them into a dangerous area, especially if they were white, they would black their face as, you know,
yeah, some
that's
sort
not
of
black
face,
face,
or even some sort of muddy look.
Yeah, camouflage, right? But I mean, in this outrage culture, you can't do that anymore without being accused of, you know, some kind of racism and white supremacy, you know?
Right.
And I'm not entirely surprised by the media response to this. A lot of them have retracted, and a couple of journalists have actually said we jumped the gun because this is what they want. They want this white supremacist, entitled young man to be the face of all evil Trump supporters and stuff, even though he didn't do nothing.
Oh, freaking A. Like, it's going to be awesome if Trump invites him to the White House.
I saw he was considering it. That would be pretty epic.
For some Big Macs.
Yeah, Nancy Pelosi will shit in her diapers, and it would just make, you know, front page news. It'd be really good.
Right. Did you want to go a little bit more into this? Because I mean, it's just a whole shitstorm. I actually was thinking about something else we could probably touch on.
No, I was, you know, I think Nancy Pelosi shitting her diapers is a good way to end it.
The transgender ban on the transgender military thing. Did you hear about this?
It's been upheld by the Supreme Court. Is that right?
That it is totally okay for the military to do that. To basically
what episode? We did an episode on this. What episode was that? We'll have to find it and put it in the comments.
Yeah, we'll have to find it. But we did do an episode. If people want to let us know in the chat if they want to skim that quick while we're talking, or we'll find it and we'll definitely put it in the description and say, you know, where we reference the transgender military thing. But yeah, like there was the Supreme Court basically said that the ban on the transgenders in the military, serving in the military, is upheld. It's okay. I think that's. I had been tagged in a tweet talking about it where there's good solid scientific ground obviously for the fact that just how you determine performance. I mean, some would even argue that, like, you know, the whole position behind like women serving in the military is there's something to that too. Like I remember there was this whole thing where like the first 2 female Army Rangers that won't serve in any frontline capacity.
Really?
That was yeah, because they still weren't like it
up
still
to the grade.
Yeah, it's like they were definitely the elite of the women, but the elite of the women were still probably
subpar to the men,
subpar to even like probably just subpar to even like the worst of the Rangers. It's just like so like I loved it when Joe Rogan, it's one of his comedy specials, he talked about like a female in an office is such a bad idea because all the men are trying to fuck her.
Yes.
And like if she's a strong, independent enough woman, like it'll change the attitudes of the men.
Correct.
Because it's just like you're gonna start off, you're gonna see a bunch of like just very typical, somewhat masculine by today's standard, but just guys. Let's say there's 10 guys, 9 guys and 1 woman. She's like the secretary. Like you're gonna see them at one, like in the beginning, they're all just gonna be like, just dudes like, hey, how's it going, Becky? They're all gonna like try to talk to her and whatever, trying to hit on her. And she's like, oh my gosh, and then as they get to know, so then they said go to 6 months later. I'm not quoting his bit verbatim, but basically like all these guys are gonna start changing their behavior. Like she's like, oh, I like dogs. Oh, I like dogs too. I like dogs too. And then it's like it's going down the line with the 9 guys, like they all like dogs now. And then so they're starting to bring in like little dog like coffee cups and little like a little doggy like toy they're gonna put on. And then like as time goes on, as the months go on, like the guys are gonna be like these like just these complete like robots to trying to like placate her, what she likes, what she doesn't like, how she behaves. And all these guys are all like playing this competitive mind game with each other to like get her attention.
Correct.
And so in the same way, now imagine that with special forces or just the military in general. How are you going to do that? Like you're going to have these guys that are going to be in the military. Yeah,
there's actually a study of this, because this kind of thing I think was attempted during the Civil War. And what they found was that if women served on the front line, the corps, the what is it, the battalion, not quite the battalion, but whatever unit was serving, would protect the woman more so than try to kill the enemy. It actually broke the social cohesion of the unit, where they became defensive rather than aggressive. And the same thing happened in the training. The training once upon a time was, I've got to be the best. But suddenly there's a woman there, and the men start competing for the attention.
It is an innately just programmed thing within men to protect a woman.
Correct.
Definitely, we protect men too, but if we're tapping into that, I mean, if all you're running off of is instinct and conditioning when you're in the field, when you're on like the front lines, wherever you are, what is another primitively driven, like just programming that we do? Protect the woman. And I mean, I have nothing against women in the military in general to serve other capacities, whether it's through some sort of medical capacity, or just there's what I've usually heard is usually the women will work in like the requisitions, or they're sort of like an assistant to like a high ranking military officer, stuff like that.
Right.
Secretaries, basically. But they can still do that. But to serve in any like combat capacity, I even wonder what it's going to be like if you had like an all-women unit.
Well, we know that actually. Funny you should mention that. Very recently, I think it's either Norway or Iceland issued an all-female Navy crew to pilot a destroyer, and they sank it. They sank off the coast of Spain. Because apparently there was, anyway, it raised a whole bunch of questions about women serving in the Scandinavian military, whatever it was. And they sank this like 50 million euro war battleship and stuff like that. So that's definitely, it raises interesting questions. Not that we're taking a side on this, but it definitely raises some interesting questions.
So
I would add to your point very quickly. I think women could fly jets, right? I think there's actually some evidence to suggest they handle the G-forces a little bit better than men, and they don't black out as much because they're kind of smaller. The blood doesn't have as far to go, kind of thing. So they actually don't black out in like high tail spins and stuff like that. I'll go with that. You're 50,000 feet up in the air, dropping some bombs. All right, I'll give you that. But the problem is they usually get shot down. And then you got to put some men out there to go and like rescue them. So
Ooh,
tough spot.
So
tough spot.
I do enjoy the messages we're getting now in the chat. Hippie Crusher is giving us a couple of emojis there, but he says 80% suicide rate now to add combat real PTSD. So yeah, 80% suicide rate among transgender military personnel because they already have a high suicide rate plus the PTSD. Holy crap.
No, it's a death sentence. I agree with that.
Transgender women transgender women winning all the women's competition is so totally unfair. Their DNA is still male. Yeah, that's from TW in the chat. And of course, Hippie Crusher has given us a big old oof from talking about the women, the whammons.
Yeah, the whammons is out there. I mean, I'll just to touch on what's going on in the UK with this thing, because we have an even bigger problem. There's been a recent ad campaign put out by the army to appeal to millennials. And oh my God, I mean, the cringe. They're putting up things like, we need your addiction to your cell phone. And the army needs your addiction to video games. And, you know, we need to have your inclusive nature as part of the military. And it's culminated in basically turning the UK military into a giant social experiment. Ooh. In fact, it was so bad. I was in the cinema and they put an ad up. The ad is available on YouTube if anybody wants to see it. And it's basically like it's a squad, probably Green Beret, like very elite UK force, going out into like this mountain region, and you see they're securing a position. And then all of a sudden, you know, one of the guys pulls out a Muslim prayer mat, puts it on the ground, and he points to Mecca and he starts his prayer while his unit is protecting him. And yeah, that was a literal ad for the UK army, right? Now, the attitude of the British generally, because most of the British don't buy into this kind of.
Hold on, before you get into that. So he pulls out the mat and he prays. Then what?
Yes, and the ad basically ends with all of the other soldiers kind of scouting out, giving him the safety to pray. And then again, it kind of jumps to the, you know, we need you, you know, join the army or whatever. I can't remember whether it's army or navy or whatever.
No.
Look, somebody, there was a interview with Sargon of Akkad recently where he interviewed a guy, and I agree with the guy's statement. I can't remember his name at the moment, but I don't give a shit if the army is all male or female or Muslim or gay or trans, whatever. If the Russians invade, all I give a shit about is they're going to kill the guy better, kill the enemy more than they kill us. That's all we care about in terms of the defense of the realm. Mm-hmm. But the honest truth is, and this is the first thing they tell people in the UK armed forces when they join, if we ever went to war with America, we would lose, straight up. That's day one. You know, boot camp 101, we will never be as strong as the Americans, right?
Right.
And as a result of that, we rely on the Americans to defend us more than we rely on the UK forces, which is why our military spending is nothing. I mean, it's nothing compared to what you guys spend. And that's what NATO is for. NATO is basically to shift the burden of protecting the realm to the Americans, so that we don't actually have to have like a fighting force. We can do these social experiments and look progressive. It's a very frightening day. Very, very frightening day for the military in the UK.
When a society becomes so enamored with its own virtue signaling, there's a problem. We are such a defended and free nation that we can experiment with just about anything here.
Yeah.
You know, the best a man can be. What?
Yeah. And it's really bad. Like if ever you pull up the campaign, they've got posters, they've got banners, and the UK public in general, especially the veterans in the UK, are pissed, are absolutely flabbergasted by this. And even one of the guys, I can't, again, for some reason, names are eluding me today. They used an image of an actual Marine, like an actual person in the military, to kind of appeal to these millennials and their snowflakeness. He was so angry that his image was associated with that, he resigned.
Ooh.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
honor is such a big thing in the military culture, and you're smearing it, right? It's the courage, the honor, the strength, the brotherhood or sisterhood, as the case might be, whatever. All of that's going to be destroyed. And this guy, he on principle, and I respect him for it. It's a sad day. He was trying to go career, and he resigned over his image being used to promote this stuff. So yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's I remember. Okay, so I interrupted you there before you because I had you describe the commercial more. Were you going into somewhere else with that, or
no? That I mean, just to say how this is how the UK,
I mean, could you imagine they do a commercial where you have like a military unit traversing the desert in like, let's say, Afghanistan, and they find a church like in the middle of nowhere. Let's say they find it like made out of like rocks and it's got like a little cross on there. And like, what if one of the guys in the unit decides, I'm gonna go pray? And then they did a commercial where they're like defending outside the church because he just has to go pray.
Yeah, there'd be outcry.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, there'd be a lot of people saying, "Well, that's not practical. Like, why do they have to defend like a whole church building now?" And then be like, "Well, why do they need to defend the guy with the prayer mat?"
Yeah. I mean, the demographic situation in the UK is much different than in the US, and let this serve as a warning for you guys. We have a very large Muslim population in proportion to you guys.
No way.
Way, like seriously. And a lot of them are in London and Birmingham. But it is actually such a demographic shift in this country that when this Pakistani Christian girl converted from Islam to Christianity, and she was literally, right, I think it was defended by the Supreme Court in Pakistan that the conversion was legitimate, her life was in danger, the UK did not offer her an asylum position.
Which one is this one?
This is very recently. I can't remember the lady's name.
Oh! I think I know what you're talking about. She got in trouble for like calling out Muhammad or something.
Yeah, and she converted to Christianity. She converted, and that's
BB something.
That might be it. That's maybe take a search for it while I'm just kind of laying out the situation.
Right.
But yeah, so the UK, which used to be a bastion of freedom, and we should have done that. I mean, the Church of England is actually part of the state here. But they refused to give this young girl an asylum application or an asylum hearing at all, or offer her any position. You got the name?
Asia Bibi.
Asia Bibi, that's it. And she's Pakistani, right?
Yep. No, I remember now because I wrote. So for my weekly roundup, I talked about her once. So
yeah.
She basically was. Yeah. She was in some sort of social situation where she was accused of insulting the Prophet Muhammad. She was thrown into jail with sentence to death. And once they got her sentence overturned, she could not leave the prison. So the prison became basically a security building to protect her from the huge crowds outside demanding her be executed. They then had to try to disperse the crowd to then try to get her to either Canada, the UK, or possibly the US, I think.
Yeah.
Just to get her out of there, and because it's a gross human rights violation. But as far as I last heard, that nothing's happened yet.
I think she's got it. If you maybe follow up on the story, but I was getting to why the UK didn't do it, and this was the official response from the Home Office, was because of political tension that would occur in the UK if they allowed her to come here. And what that basically is a translation of is we have a very large Muslim Pakistani population in the UK. And if we bring her here, there's a very good chance she might lose her life anyway. So we can't guarantee her safety. And that is the situation. And this is the UK.
Oh.
She got it, right? She got asylum somewhere.
She's going to Canada.
It's Canada. Okay. Yeah.
Her daughters are in Canada at least. Got some guy TW here in the chat saying she burnt the Quran.
Did she? I didn't know that.
I'm like,
that was okay.
So.
Yeah, that's definitely I mean, again, in Pakistan, yeah, that is a crime. I think it's illegal to like marry like a Muslim to marry a non-Muslim and stuff. There's a lot of stuff in the Pakistani culture of Islam that's it's not great. It's very much a part of their government and constitution, so it's not great. And we imported. There's a very large Pakistani population here, and that's a very large part of the acid attacks that happen in London is kind of within that community, as well as some of the grooming gangs and the sexual abuse of young women and stuff.
Obviously, you guys have to ban acid and ban rape.
Right, exactly. I mean, we got rid of the guns. We're now trying to get rid of butter knives and scissors. Acid is now going to become criminalized.
Hey, you need to criminalize rape though, because
somehow but rape with underage girls should become illegal.
Definitely.
And I know I'm somewhere out there. There's going to be some people saying, well, yes, it's not only Pakistani, and I agree. There were actually some white people involved, some like British people, and
Pakistanis, it's Syrians too, and North Africans,
and there's So I'm not, but demographically, for such a small population, they're overwhelmingly represented in these crimes, and that is something that shouldn't be ignored, or taken lightly.
Yeah, it's fucking crazy, I tell you.
Yeah.
When are you coming here again?
It's very funny actually, because I went out to meet with some trader friends. So guys watching, I am a financial trader. And I went to meet one of my mentors, a guy called Gregoire Dupont. He used to work for the Institute of Trading and Portfolio Management, which is Anton Krell's school. So that was my first mentorship, was with them. And he went independent, and I finished a 3-month course with him. Really, really good. He's really helped me out. Anyway, a bunch of us met up for drinks, and we were talking about the hedge fund industry and the prop trading industry in London. And he basically said, it's done. There are no more independent prop houses. If you want to have a career as a trader, the banks are all going algorithm. It's basically done in London. And if you really want to do it, you got to go to New York. And I just said, shit, I've gone to the wrong fucking country, man. It took me so long to get here. And now, my industry's dried up, So I actually, for like a moment, I sat there and was like, I got to go to New York. So, and I could do it. I mean, there is a way that I can do it. I'm kind of thinking about it. Let's say that.
Wow. That's the first I heard of that.
Yeah. It's the first I've thought of it since I got here. But yeah, literally,
you've been there 2 years. Maybe I don't know, get a little more established. Then you come here. So
yeah, I have some investments that I'm hoping to pay off. So once the property portfolio is making some decent money, I'd be in a better position to make the transition. I use what's called an intercompany transfer, or unless somebody's going to hook me up with a nice American girl. My girlfriend wouldn't like that too much, but I mean, it's an option. I'm open to that. If you make women great again, I'll definitely consider it.
I'll just, I'll start looking in New York, Brooke.
Yeah. There we go.
I'll create a dating profile copying yours, and then say it's in New York, and then just start, scoping out chicks.
Yeah, just take my body and stick it on, somebody really, really hot and taller. I'm sure I'll have no problem.
We'll get some Photoshop experts on that.
There we go.
Was there something else we wanted to touch on? I know we've touched on 3 things, actually, surprisingly well. There's not much really going on, is there? I mean, there's the shutdown.
Right. I mean, I was about to say, I hear rumblings that Nancy Pelosi has come out of her dementia long enough to come to some agreement with Trump over opening the government temporarily
for 3 weeks. So
better than nothing.
The contention now is the fact that, did Trump cave in? Did he give in?
Right.
Did
he cave on the wall?
I think he probably did.
You think he did?
I mean, and here's what I was talking to someone about this last night. So Pelosi and Schumer are just 800,000 people not getting their paychecks that are working for the federal government. where would you say? So, like, typical unemployment rates are rated by what? Like the percentage of the working people, obviously, that are not working. Usually, you want about a couple percent that shows people in transition to jobs. If it's past a certain percentage point, don't you like then it's considered a problem, right?
Yeah, yeah. Because there are two ratings. There's one that does the labor participation rate, and then there's one that looks at how many people are claiming unemployment benefits, right? And that's how they measure how many people are technically employed. So when that role reduces, they know, oh well, they've created so many jobs. But the other one,
800,000 people doesn't really. It's not really that much, is it?
no, no, I mean, it's a lot. But I mean, if you consider that Walmart employs about 1 million people alone, it's not really that big in that sense. But yeah, I mean, but most of these people are now pulling down 6-figure salaries. So I'd love to see the accounting on that to see how much money that really translates to every month.
I mean, they reopened the government for 3 weeks. Does that mean during that 32 days or whatever, there's going to be back pay plus a little extra?
Yeah, yeah. This is what happened when the Freedom Caucus got Obama to shut down the government. I can't remember how long it went. It was like 3 weeks or something like that. I can't remember exactly. And at the end of it, whoever was owed money, they passed a resolution to pay all the back pay, and everybody got like a little extra for damages, whatever the fuck that is. Just some extra theft. And nobody was really hurt by this, right? The only people who were hurt by this were, the politicians, right? And I think the Republicans really suffered from that because they were seen as responsible. But I have to see what's going on with Trump in this wall.
The TSA agents really suffered because they couldn't fondle any hot chicks.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you do miss fingering and anal probes and such. It's a slippery job.
Oh God damn it! It was surprising though, like all the things that started going private. I mean, you had volunteers cleaning up the parks. You had private contracted TSA agents for the airports.
Yeah.
You had just
obviously like the air traffic controllers were still working. Like all of the major institutions that actually do something worked. The only thing that got shut down was the bureaucrats, right? I mean, 80% of the government was still kind of in operation, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's something like that. I'm interested to see Trump's play on this because I've heard two sides on this matter. So everybody's saying, oh, he caved on the wall. I'm not entirely sure that's what it is because I think he's reopening it to, again, make the appeal because he wants to do a State of the Union. So I think he's allowing that so that he can make the appeal to the House and, the joint session and to the American people about the need for the wall. And I don't think Pelosi and Schumer have a winning position on this because for the most part, I think the Americans support the wall and some comprehensive immigration reform, but they definitely support choosing Americans over foreigners. And Pelosi and them kind of suggesting, well, there's so many of these refugees, quote unquote. They're not refugees, they're economic migrants because there's no war in Mexico. They could claim, and many of them have been offered asylum in Mexico. So that's not what this is about at all. They're economic migrants. And that is not grounds for refugee status. And I think the American people are looking at Schumer and the rest of them basically drawing a line in the sand for these foreigners over Americans. They're not going to win the hearts and minds of the Americans. That's my opinion.
Right. Yeah, it's I'm just kind of looking at just the memes. I don't know if you saw was it like day 30 of the shutdown? Was it day 32? There was a picture of like grizzly bears shooting laser out of their eyes. There were people even showing like day number 1530 something of the shutdown, and it was showing like super skyscrapers and flying cars and like a futuristic America. Like if we had a real if the shutdown continues, America will actually be a greater country.
I mean, I've seen the fear mongering. It's going to be Sharknadoes and all chaos.
Oh no, it was like, but more like day one of the government reopening, and it was like showing kind of like that, just like shit hitting the fan, just authoritarian. Like, so the libertarian memes are pretty good, where you have like the libertarian fantasy of like the longer the shutdown goes, the more of a great country we become.
Yeah,
and then they like immediately swing all the way to the other side of like basically rampant authoritarianism the first day the government comes back online.
It's like a crackdown.
Exactly, like a crackdown. Like, now we're just like the slave trade is happening again and all this shit. Like, what the hell?
The one I saw, which I thought was really funny, was the first day that the government reopens, and they put the shrieking girl from Trump's inauguration, reeing at the sky like, and you see every libertarian on the day the government reopens.
Exactly.
It's yeah. I mean, I don't know enough about it. I saw Tim Pool did an episode, basically saying he's not exactly sure what Trump's game is on this, and I think the Republicans haven't really stood up on this issue either, which I think is very well. It's not surprising. They're cowards. But
I saw a libertarian friend of mine posted something that said, is Trump caving or is this some 17D chess?
Yeah. Is this some kind of, really complicated play? And I don't understand it, because really and truly the Democrats should just give it to him. He's going to address comprehensive immigration, whatever that means. Give him the wall. They waste more money in an hour than what it costs to build a goddamn wall, right?
Pretty damn close, yeah.
Yeah, pretty damn close, right? This siding with foreigners over Americans is not a winning position. It's anyway. I'm not even going to get into it, because the UK is not in doing much better on this front. But I don't understand what they think they're appealing to the American people on this for. It's not really a winning issue.
Yeah, it's.
I mean, in your work, you have not been affected by the shutdown, right?
Oh my gosh, just holy crap. I mean, what is it again? Cats and dogs living together.
Cats and dogs living together. Total anarchy.
Fire falling from the sky. I mean,
all the worst parts of the Bible. That's
cars were crashing all over the place. Wait, that already happens in Minnesota because it's winter. Yeah, I kind of point it like I see it as like I'm literally living in the middle of nowhere, and a lot of my work involves going to places that are in the middle of nowhere, so I don't really see like what's going on.
But I mean, Minneapolis hasn't burned off the map.
As far as I know, at least I haven't checked.
Yeah, San Francisco hasn't like inserted itself up its own asshole. It's just life goes on, right? And if they really kept it at 80% of the operations of the government, and it hasn't really affected anybody, you've just solved your budget crisis, right?
Well, here's what I was actually saying. I was thinking if the shutdown continued for probably another month.
Yeah.
I would actually go on to the White House website where you can put in petitions.
Yeah.
To say to basically propose to say, hopefully it would go viral, that the government owes the people a prorated tax return for next year.
Interesting.
Because they're operating at 80% of budget for 2 months.
Yeah.
I think that is a significant enough change that we should get that money back.
Right. 2 months out of what would have been their income should be rebated. Interesting philosophy. That's not how it works, but it's kind of like hire purchase.
Yeah, it could. I mean, that it could. I would hope at least there could be some investigation into it. Like, so I get that out there. Maybe it pushes certain politicians or certain analysts to really look into it and go, oh wait, maybe we do deserve some sort of rebate, or maybe. It would it would more so be what it means rather than what we're trying to do, like what it would represent to get people to think about it, talk about it.
Yeah. I think it's a good discussion to be had. You see, again, Trump doesn't care about this situation the way like Obama did. So when Obama was in the shutdown, his instructions from the top were to cause as much pain as humanly possible. So I've shared this story before where, you know, the poor Boy Scouts couldn't go to the Washington Monument, and they had CNN out front, like with the crying scouts, and oh my God, you know, I just came all the way from, you know, the boondocks, and I can't see the Washington Monument. Oh, somebody please think of the children, you know. Nothing from the Trump shutdown. There's absolute crickets in terms of, you know, the pain from this shutdown.
Tax returns. That was like the closest thing they had, and that was debunked right away.
Yeah, exactly. the Democrats created, and they started the fire, and then they played rescue at the same time on the whole tax return issue. And it's a non-starter, because if Americans don't get their tax return, it'll be riots, right?
Yeah, because so for everyone who's watching, yeah, the tax returns are actually coming forward. I think it was, yeah, had to do with like I think I'd mentioned this in the episode before, the anti-deficiency, you know, some sort of deficiency act. It's called. It's the law that basically explains how funding is allocated during a partial shutdown. By interpreting it differently, the Office of Management and Budget basically was able to allocate the necessary funds. But the not misconception, the fake news, I'll just say it, the fake news of it is still going out there. People are like, you're still not going to get your tax returns, you're still not going to get your tax returns. And I'm like, oh, you can file. And then I said, well, Bloomberg came out right away, which is the article, Brooke, you sent me.
Yeah.
And I have I'm from a family of accountants, one of which is certified to be a tax audit representative. So yeah. He has his contacts with the IRS, and they're like, yeah, they actually brought on more people just to manage the tax returns this year. Correct. So it's definitely still happening. I mean, I type in so what you can do is you go to the IRS website, you can click where's my refund, you type in your social, your amount that you're supposed to get back, and your filing status, and it tells you if they got it. They got my return. It has the full, it still shows, yep, they will be sending out tax returns. And if the government is open for 3 more weeks, during that 3 weeks, the IRS will actually be operating at 100%.
I'm not even convinced that they were shut down to begin with, right? I think, again, you can't trust anything in the media, and especially with Pelosi and these guys. I don't ever think it was in threat to begin with. I think they just said that as a scare tactic. I mean, obviously I can't prove this, but it wouldn't surprise me if someday we learned they just said it to threaten the idea that the IRS was in some kind of shutdown when it really wasn't.
Well,
just for political gains.
The idea was, depending upon how they interpreted this law, that explained how to allocate funds during a shutdown.
Because again, I think they knew that already. Because this is not the first time the government has shut down and had to deal with these tax kind of issues. So,
I mean, maybe, I don't know, maybe Trump's guys decided to, so depending upon how they interpreted the law. So you said Obama's tactic with the shutdown was to apply as much pain as possible. So they're not going to look into any way of alleviating political pressure.
Correct.
The Trump administration, Trump said, figure this shit out, because I want to walk this out.
Well, I want this to be the greatest shutdown, the greatest.
Like if you could create if the perfect shutdown is to continue it without creating a large amount of pressure, it becomes sort of a long sting than a huge hit to the to the groin. You want it to just be a constant sting, because that sting is what's going to piss off the Democrats to make them give in to giving him the wall. Whereas if he can't, he was like, hey, look into these rules, look into the laws. So the Office of Budget Management comes back and says, hey, we can actually still run the IRS. And he goes, great, keep doing that. Now they reopen it for 3 more weeks, so people are going to kind of realize, wait, what? I think you never know. Maybe there is a little bit of 3D chess going on here. But I mean, for all we know, he's going to, and I'm not saying I believe in the 3D chess theory. I'm just saying someone could play this game and say, well, he's going to reopen it for 3 months. 3 weeks. And it's going to shut down again. And it's really going to show people that nothing fucking changed.
I think, and that was Obama's fear. The Obama's fear was the longer the federal government stays open, stays shut down, people are going to realize nothing has changed. Like how little you really need from the government, because most stuff is handled by the states anyway, right? If you need to sell a car or buy a house or whatever the case, it's all run by the state, right? You don't really need
If
a lot
the
of stuff from
federal
the government.
government 100% shut down tomorrow, it wouldn't be the Rothbard button.
No. If it really shut down tomorrow, well, I mean, you definitely have upsets and stuff like that. But yeah, I agree. It wouldn't be total anarchy overnight. But that was Obama's issue. The reason he was pressuring to get it done is because the irrelevancy of the state becomes more and more apparent. Trump doesn't give a shit. And that's why I really appreciate, I mean, he's not the greatest politician, and I mean, yeah, he has a lot of flaws, but I do enjoy, his playing of the political game to win, which is great.
Yeah, the anarchist in me, the troll in me, is kind of just sees it as all this one big game. Like, I posted the meme you saw a while ago of the roller coaster, and it said how libertarians see the Trump presidency. And we had our good socialist friend kind of like, oh yeah, I think all the political spectrum thinks that, and I was like, no. It depends on how you look at it. The roller coaster is fun to some, absolutely frightening to others.
Correct.
The libertarians are just in random spots on the thing, all with their hands out, probably not even having the safety thing clicked down all the way.
Because that's status bullshit right there. Wearing a safety belt on a roller coaster, that's status bullshit right there.
Exactly, some protectionist garbage. We're just gonna be hands out. Keep your hands inside the vehicle. Fuck that shit. We're
I'm
going all around.
Exactly.
And Trump's just in the front, like,
just
this is going to be the best roller coaster in the world. I mean, the shutdown was really just him, like, I don't know what the shutdown would be in like an analogy with a roller coaster. Did he just put a hard brake to it or something, or slow it way down?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if he's going full speed ahead or what.
But yeah, it's like libertarians are the ones that are hands out, standing up, riding this thing out, while the rest of the political spectrum is like holding on for dear life. Some are screaming to want to get off. Some are like kind of doubling down and strapping in real tight to like, we're going to ride this thing into the ground. Different ways to look at it, but
it's all the same ride.
It's all the same ride. So yeah, I guess so, but it's just like, it's how you perceive the ride.
Correct. No, it's great. It's great. It's very entertaining. And I really want to see, he's not going to give up on the wall. I don't know how he's going to do it, but I'm pretty certain he's going to really push for it. When is the next House election? In 2 years with 2020?
Yeah. So, because midterm election basically just means middle of the presidential term. So
yeah,
2020 is the next. Yeah, 2020. I'm telling people, like, 2020, Trump's going to win again. It's just it's a given. It's so much points towards that. Not just because, I mean, there's obvious like just historical trends where the last time you had a president that didn't serve a full 2 terms was Bush
the senior.
Yeah. Bush Senior. And that's just going to keep, I think it just keeps going, and just the media is not letting up on their doubling down of the deplorable narrative. White supremacy, MAGA boy, everything is just hate all the Trump supporters. So they're just going to say, fuck it. We're going to, like, this time Trump might as well just win the popular and the electoral votes.
I think it's within the realm of possibility, especially what happened in the midterm. So it's not uncommon for an incumbent president to flip the House in his first term, right? That's actually quite normal. And it happened for Trump, but it didn't happen to the extent that they were hoping for. Like, they thought it was going to be this, what was it, blue wave, and it's going to be like the antibodies killing the cancer, and that's how the left was portraying it. And it really wasn't that at all. It wasn't even close.
Yeah, it was actually going a lot better than most people perceived it to be. You always have swings.
Yes.
But it didn't swing quite as much as they thought. Like, the Republicans still have quite a bit of power in general.
Yeah, and they gained in the Senate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
which is what?
Yeah, which is again a counter trend. And ironically, a lot of the Republicans who lost, and this is the key tell, were the never Trumpers. Were the ones who were like, we're not supporting Trump and this, that, and the other, and they lost.
Real quick,
Sure.
our cute little socialist Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was put onto the oversight committee of the House.
Oh, for fuck's sake!
Fucking oversight.
Well, anyway, I don't think we have time to really get into that. But
I just thought I'd drop that in there, and people go, "Wait, what? What did
he say?" I mean, anyway, that's crazy.
Yeah, I'm glad we touched on quite a few topics there, and it's actually more of a news episode than anything. But yeah, I mean, anything you wanted to kind of wrap up with, kind of last thoughts?
Yeah, one last thought on this. I've actually been on a podcast with Kirk Megu, which is a guy from Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes.
And we might have him on pretty soon as well. So I just want to give him the just kind of promote it. He has the podcast called Independent Thought and Freedom. He's just starting out, guys. So if anybody's interested in that kind of stuff, he does a lot of political and historical commentary. Yeah, I just wanted to give him a plug.
It is on iTunes. Type in Kirk Megu.
Yeah, Megu. Yeah, I'll give you a link and you can put it.
Yep, we'll put it below. Also, if anyone is since we got a whole bunch of new people, we definitely gotta let people know. This podcast is, of course, we're at this time we're completely self-funded. All the equipment and everything we have, we've kind of taken out of pocket, and we're definitely Brook over here showing his Rode mic, which is top quality stuff.
It is the greatest Rode mic in the world.
Exactly. But if you guys are interested in supporting us and supporting the content we produce, not only just in the podcast, but also the content everything that comes through for the podcast, Brook and I split evenly. So you can definitely, it supports Brook and myself, which of course, go check out his channel too. Yeah, we do have a Subscribe Star and a Patreon, which we have both set up right now. I think Subscribe Star finally got their payment processor figured out.
I think I saw that. Yeah, it's good news.
We have those. I mean, we're as we're gaining more subscribers now, we're definitely trying to see. We want to produce better quality stuff. Whether that would be just being able to set aside more time and having something for what we're doing. We're not sacrificing time for money, and also to be able to better fund any sort of endeavors we have in the future, so we can start setting aside part of our budget, I guess, to
make the show great again.
Exactly.
Make Shitlord Preaching great again.
Ooh, we could make that into a hat someday.
That's gonna be on the merch. Special discounts if you subscribe now.
Future merch. But yeah, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to this channel, subscribe to Brook Potter's channel as well. Follow both of us on Twitter. I'm at Amos Joe. Brook is at Brook_Potter. All the links are of course below, and follow us on iTunes, of course, where the podcast is put up on Tuesday mornings, with of course the live stream being here on Sundays. But if there isn't really anything to go into, we will see everyone next week on Sunday. Of course, Sunday, 11 o'clock Central Time. We do pretty much an hour and a half, and we thank everyone for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for watching, guys.
Have a good one.
Take care, guys.